Hello, good crowd. We are back here at Rotary headquarters. We're now visiting with Michael McGovern. He is the chair of the International PolioPlus Committee. So he is the volunteer running the global polio effort. We're really fortunate to have him with us. Stick around. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Our sponsor, Johnson & Johnson, matches most individual donations up to $250 at caringcrowd.org. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin. Good to be with you.
We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
I have been writing, speaking, talking, hosting shows about polio now for 6 years, I think. And, like you, I haven't traveled as much as you, but traveled around the world. It really is an honor to have you on the show to talk about this global effort. You joined Rotary back in 1986.
I did.
And at that time, 33 years ago, the fight against polio had been conceived and announced, but not really launched. So you've been a Rotarian for as long as the organization has had this as its flagship project underway.
That's about right. One of my first memories in Rotary was another member of my club asked me to come early to a meeting. And he asked me to come early so he could sit down and buy me a drink. We meet in the evening. And what he was looking for was for me to give $1,000 to the original polio campaign. And, it was an expensive drink.
Yeah. Well, that makes such a good point. My recollection of the stories, I don't remember because I wasn't there then. I am a member of Rotary, but I am relatively new. But Rotary set out to raise $125 million, believing that they could immunize every child in the world with that money and solve the problem. And how much did you actually raise in that campaign?
The campaign was actually $120 million was the goal, and when it was all done, it was about $247 million.
Yeah, so they more than doubled the goal.
They doubled the goal. Some of it didn't come in. It was a 3-year pledge that people were asked to make, and everyone was absolutely thrilled when the goal was made and was surpassed because people finally said, wow, we are really going to eradicate polio. And I don't think anyone ever dreamed it would still be working at the same thing 30 years later.
Well, I think a lot of Rotarians back in that era believed that when Rotary celebrated its centennial in 2004, that this would be something we would brag about having done.
Absolutely.
And here we are, 15 years past that mark, still working on it. How does that feel to you, having been involved in that effort since you stroked that first check 30 years ago?
I think every Rotarian who's been involved in polio eradication needs to be proud of the organization and proud of whatever role they have had in it. We're not quite done. And, there's this frustration about that. I understand that. But when we look at that, there's 18 million children who otherwise, and adults now, who otherwise either would have died or otherwise would become paralyzed if we hadn't mobilized to take on this effort. And when no matter what, I'll get frustrated that, 2019 has not been a good as year as, 2017, for instance, but we still need to look at the fact that all those kids have been protected. And, and we've shown by country, place by place, that this is possible to do. And, we still have every confidence we're going to get it done.
Yeah. As you think about the message for the world, because really there's a lot of funding left to do. Yes. Governments are helping out, and the Gates Foundation is helping out, and of course WHO and UNICEF are partners, the CDC is partners, there's a lot of people, but that doesn't mean that ordinary people like you who 30 years ago wrote a check for $1,000 when that was still money.
Right.
We still need to be contributing to this effort. How do you sell it today?
It's first of all, as the chair of the International PolioPlus Committee, there's so many Rotarians have the passion to see it done. There's still an awful lot of people in different parts of the world who have directly seen the impact and the effects of polio. I think it's that passion combined with the knowledge that we've achieved at 99.9% of the places of the world, we need this continuing push to get it done. And I think it's a sense of continuity, it's a sense of organizational responsibility for Rotary, but there's so many other individuals who, they're impacted by other diseases. And it's just so meaningful to see that if we can eradicate this disease, there's so many other groups and entities and people that can get together to solve some of the other difficult problems of the world. And I say that, back when I was born in the 1956, back then, people listed the second biggest problem in the United States was polio. And, people don't think that anymore. But as a result, if we can take on polio, put the scientific community together, the governmental community, the places, people like the World Health Organization, UNICEF, CDC, Gavi now, and the Gates Foundation. People ought to have confidence that the world can still accomplish important things.
This is a very important thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Second disease ever to potentially be eliminated after smallpox.
Yeah. The end is clearly more difficult than we had anticipated.
It is.
Not only has the process been longer, but this end game strategy that we first implemented 5 years ago really anticipated we'd be more or less done by now. We've revised it.
Yeah.
What's the essential element to pushing this effort across the finish line in your mind?
I worked in local government for 38, 39 years. I retired as a local government official. And, I'm a strong believer that to get anything accomplished, you got to win the hearts and minds of people locally. And to eradicate polio, we can see in Nigeria, when you get the what we call the frontline workers, where people who live in those communities, when we get them asking their neighbors and friends to do it, that's what gets it done. It's the same thing in Pakistan and Afghanistan. We're going to get this done if we can gain the local support that's needed. We need money to do that. We need money to provide the vaccines for what we call the surveillance, the identifying the cases, and if we can get that whole team working together, but recognizing that the most important part of where everything occurs is on the local street and the local village and down this lane or that lane.
One of the challenges that Rotary has in raising money, and they've accepted a big responsibility. They've committed to raise $50 million a year from 1.2 million people around the world, not all of whom are in a position to stroke a check for $1,000.
Right.
One of the challenges is that there are so few Rotarians now who have a personal connection to polio. You talked about this a little bit. In 1956, I think you said polio was the number 2 item on the list of public issues in the United States. I hadn't heard that before. That's a very interesting observation.
After nuclear war.
Yeah. No one thinks about it today, and young people don't even know what it is. How do you make it urgent for them?
We need to continue to get the word out about what a terrible disease this was, how it did impact so many people. We do still have a lot of polio survivors. We have a lot of individuals around, and particularly in some of the countries that have been, having polio longer than, for example, it was 25 years ago this year that we had the last case in the Americas. But, but they still understand that that this is a disease that a lot of people have worked hard on, and that if we don't solve it, we're going to be back up to 200,000 cases a year. And and I think when people understand how quickly it can come back if you don't continue to focus on it and get it done. So that motivates Rotarians. I think for Rotarians there's a lot of institutional loyalty. This is something we took on. It's people we deeply respected that we knew in the past that might have moved on. And to honor them, we need to get it done. Plus the fact that, all of these Rotarians' kids, grandkids, whatever, could still have polio. There's nothing stopping it from coming back. Excuse me, if you don't keep the immunization levels at it and ensure that, right now we're still needing to immunize, 450 million kids a year. Even where there's no polio, because it can easily come back.
Like we like to say, it's one plane ride away, right?
One plane ride away. And I had a meeting with that I was with some other Rotary leaders locally and partnership leaders in the Democratic Republic of the Congo with the president there back a couple months ago. And, just like a month before, there had been about 800 folks from his country had come to the community in my area. They were seeking asylum. And, that just shows, 800 people from this part of the world that was still having vaccine-derived cases and other issues that weren't actually having polio cases.
Yeah.
How quickly, it really, hit me.
Yeah.
This could have come back to my own community.
Right.
If it could come back to my community, it could happen to any community.
Any community. Yeah, that is such an important observation. Mike, why is this personal to you?
It's I could, the original funding of Jonas Salk's work was from the March of Dimes, and when I was a kid, we had a dining room table. People still ate dining room tables, but we usually ate in the kitchen. But the dining room table, the reason we couldn't eat there is because my mother was a March of Dimes volunteer, and we had all these envelopes on the table and all these little cards where people had put dimes in. And so, and it was she had a first cousin that had polio. So I think, that it was that personal, it was a cause that my mother was greatly devoted to. It was a cause that, one of my cousins actually had polio. But it's, for me, it's that, but I'm part of an organization, Rotary, that is willing to take on a big challenge, see it through, and get it done. And I think it's a matter of pride as a Rotarian, and it's also a matter of, what drives me is looking at the work that's done by Rotarians, particularly in Pakistan, Nigeria, in so many countries across the world. It's, we don't want to let them down. No, particularly let the kids down.
As you look back on your 30-plus years in Rotary, what are you most proud of having accomplished? I accomplish very little. I belong to an organization that accomplishes a lot, and if anything, I think I'm proud of is that I've really recognized the value of working with a lot of people from diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds, and finding out what we have in common and working together to do that. And it's not a specific thing you can point to, but I think it's that aura, that just the whole sense of working as a team, getting done, and respecting diversity, respecting different cultures, and respecting that the success of this is a benefit to the entire world. And for that reason, you need to work with everyone in the world who's like-minded to get it done. Yeah. What's the most important lesson you've learned over these 30 years?
It's a lesson not only from polio, but from everyone to listen. It's listen, process through, and don't listen to one person. Listen to many folks, and eventually, the old saying, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set ye free." Mm-hmm. I think the most important lesson is to listen to everyone's viewpoints, and I particularly in my professional work, I learned long ago. You have meetings, and you sit there, and you don't agree with everyone, but I also learned to accept that on most issues, we'll never know who's right until 30 or 40 years from now, or who was right. And and I think that's a lesson learned is you got to respect everyone where they're coming from and what's important to them.
Yeah, great observation. Great observation. Mike, what's your superpower?
I'm not into that. Someone told me you might ask me that question because apparently you ask it in all your interviews, and I thought, how do I want to answer that? I came down. I want to answer it truthfully. I don't have a superpower. I strongly believe in the strength of everyone together, and this putting people on a pedestal, and that's crap. It's it's I don't have a superpower.
What has helped you be? What do you draw on for strength to accomplish all that you do in your life?
I think an ethical compass, in part. The sense that we're here for a short time, and if you want to accomplish something meaningful, you have an opportunity to do it. You can work with others to do it. You got to build on positive energy, build on positive views, and you got to be willing to accept that you're not always right, and that you've got to look for the influence of others to see things through.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, thank you so much for taking time with us today. Before you go, would you take just a minute and tell everyone how they can learn more about Rotary and especially the fight against polio?
Good. Rotary has a great website, rotary.org. If you go to Facebook, you type Rotary into the top of it. All those Instagram, all those other social media entities. We have websites, polionow.org. If you really want to find out about polio from a broader perspective, there's a website called polioeradication.org, and that's the website of the polio initiative that consists of the World Health Organization, UNICEF, the Centers for Disease Control, Rotary, Gavi, and the Gates Foundation.
And they post a great weekly update, I think, every Thursday.
They do. Every Thursday. Where I live, in my part of the world, it's in the morning, but every Thursday morning, and I look forward to that most weeks. And sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm not.
The news, this has not been a year for reading the polio update, but to your point, the long-term trends are great, and we're going to get this done.
Exactly.
Right?
We're going to get it done. The long-term trends are great. Rotarians themselves have continued to be supportive. There's been some other individuals who have been very supportive. The governments of the world just have been tremendous in not getting discouraged. Obviously the support of the Gates Foundation is important, but in the end, it is going to be the woman on the street, the man on the street, and allowing people to put drops in their mouths, and that's what we hope for a polio-free world.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Mike, for joining us.
Well, thanks, Devin.
Really
good to see you.
We wish you every success in your effort to eradicate polio.
Well, it's your success as well. It's,
Thank you.
Everyone's working together on it.
All righty. Let's
you.
do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thanks for tuning in to the Your Mark on the World show, the Social Impact Podcast. Please subscribe via YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify.